So I'm going to be giving a talk at Pesa Toastmasters on November 14th. It's a Wednesday, so I'll miss that meeting. There I'll have a handout. I don't have a handout here, but I'll talk about the handout in my talk today, so don't freak out if you don't. I talk about a handout and you actually don't have one. And it's all about the 4 acts and how to build and develop and grow your speeches. You may be familiar with this already, but they aren't, so I'll be talking to them about it. And every week I'll just be going through the speech again and again, just kind of hammer it home into my head. So with no further ado, please join me in welcoming our next speaker, Tim Wilson. Do you want to become a better speaker? A few of you. The rest of you are in the wrong room. I was the same way. Years ago at Toastmasters, I wanted to become a better speaker. And as the years went by, it happened. I became a better and better speaker, which is great. But then one day I started wondering, okay, I'm a better speaker, but am I a good speaker? You see, it's very easy to become a better speaker. When you start out here and you go to here, you're a better speaker, right? But you start here and go to here, you're a better speaker, but probably you're also a good speaker. So that question started going through my mind, am I a good speaker? Am I really a good speaker? How do I know if I'm a good speaker? And when I thought, I don't think I'm a good speaker. I don't think I'm really that good. I've seen what I think of good speakers. I don't think my speech is quite in that. How do I'm going to get to that level? What am I going to do to take myself? How do I build and develop and grow these questions becoming a good speaker? These questions started going over in my head, and it just started driving me crazy. I spent years, and yet I still wasn't a good speaker. So what should I do? So I asked my friend Rocky Romero, great guy, a black hair salesman. I said, Rocky, I want to become a good speaker. How do I do it? Rocky said, Tim, if you want to become a good speaker, you just have to talk to good speakers. Make sense? Right? And figure out what they do. So they're okay. Well, Toastmasters has good speakers. And as you may know, you've heard of it probably, the world champion of public speaking. Probably heard about that. You were attending that. Yes, exactly. And one speaker is rated the best of all in the world. So I thought, these guys probably know what they're talking about. So I thought, okay, I became a virtual student of world champions of public speaking. So Ed Tate, Darren McCroy, Greg Valentine, and just studied what they're doing, what they're talking about, how they're going through it, and discovered they were all kind of saying the same thing. They said it differently, but they're all saying the same thing. And the main thing was, instead of focusing on yourself and all the stuff you're doing up here, really you just need to focus on your audience. All about your audience. Or as Darren McCroy says, all about what happens in your audience's mind. It's all that matters. So I kind of boiled that down to what I call the 4 acts. And just as a plague in the 4 acts, your speech is 4 acts. A act, C act, T act, and S act. You have to have all 4 acts if you want to have a good speech. So the first act is the A act. The A act, you can write this down in your handout. As I mentioned, you don't have a handout, so don't freak out. But you can write this down in your handout. Attention. Attention. First job as a speaker is to get your audience's attention. Because right now there's a question rocketing through your mind. Right now, you're sitting there. Your question is, okay, who is the speech for? Right? Who's the speech for? Have you ever had a situation like in a business meeting or just any speech where you start wondering, who is the speech for? You know what I'm talking about, right? Your business. Have you ever had a situation, a business presentation, you thought, okay, who the speech is for? Not me. I don't know who the speech was targeted for, but they're not here in this room. At least it's not sitting in this chair, and they're not in my body. I don't know what I'm doing here. So you lose your audience attention right there, right at the very beginning. The audience says, no, the speech is for them. So how do you tell? Speech is for the audience. Well, what these guys kept on saying was the word you. The word you is magic. Use the you. Use the you. Because all of a sudden, if you use the you, people know, hey, speech is for me. It's that simple. You're going to learn, you're going to find out, you're going to discover, and the audience just thinking, yeah, it's for me. You ever notice when people use the word you, your ears kind of perk up, pay attention? Hey, you! Somebody's talking to me, right? Could be anywhere outside, someone yells that, and you're thinking, is it me? You talking to me? But if they said, hey, I! You probably wouldn't pay much attention. Might think it's kind of a weird thing for somebody to say. So use the you. A act of attention. And the C act of content. Content. Write that down too. So what happens after you wonder, okay, who is the speech for? You start saying, okay, well, I get who the speech is for. Using you, great, got my attention. But what's the problem? What is the problem? So what's the question that comes into your mind? Right? You're sitting there and you wonder, okay, what's the problem here? What's the big deal? What's the issue? And if it's not a big deal, if it's not a problem, and you're thinking, I listen to the speech, there's no problem here, why are you even listening to the speech? Why bother listening to a speech if there's not a clear problem that's actually going to get you interested and involved? You say, oh, this is a big problem, major problem. If it's not a problem, you don't care. Right? Look at something you're thinking, there's no problem here. This isn't a problem, everything's fine. So if you don't agree there's a problem, you don't buy into the problem, then again, you also stop listening at that point. Even if they got your attention, there's no problem. Forget about it. So how do you solve that problem? How do you make sure there is a problem? You grow the conflict. It's not enough for things to be bad or a problem. They got to become a bigger problem. The problem is to grow and grow and grow and grow. Grow the conflict, make it big problem. It's not enough to just have a problem. It has to be a major problem because you really kind of want your audience to freak out. You get your audience freaking out a little bit, scared, terrified, that's a good thing. Just ask Al Gore. He makes millions of dollars scaring the crap out of people. Everything is melting, the polar bears are taking over, whatever it is, it's a huge global problem. Whatever you think about Al Gore, plus, bad, and different, you've got to admit, he knows how to make a problem big. Grow the conflict. Grow the problem huge. And once you grow that conflict huge, you come to the T act of technique. But some people don't quite get to the technique thing. Have you ever heard a speech like this where somebody grows the problem? And it's a big problem. It's the worldwide problem. It's huge. It's horrible. But I don't know how to handle it. I got no clue. Sure hope you survive it because it's a pretty big problem out there. It's going to crush the world, and we're going to destroy our economy, and all these horrible things are going to happen. Technology's going to go down, but I don't know how to stop it. I got no idea. But if you do, you last through the apocalypse, great. We'll meet up for dinner, So if you don't have a technique, because once you got this big problem, you know what the problem is, your question is, how do I solve the problem? How do I solve the problem, right? If you know there's a big problem out there, the first thing you start thinking is, wait a minute, okay, how do I solve the problem? TAC, technique. How? Write that down. Of course, if you've really grown the problem a lot, you kind of want to make sure your audience remembers that technique. What happens if your audience forgets how to solve the problem? Well, what happens is, and maybe you've had this happen, is that you get a huge problem, a glowing problem, a global apocalypse is going to occur. And the audience is thinking, yeah, things are bad, they're awful, they're horrible. But they forget what they're supposed to do. Like, everything's horrible and awful, it's going to destroy the entire world, but I kind of forget what the solution is. Some people are kind of panicking and freaking out, but they can't figure out how to remember how to solve the problem, which doesn't do too much good as a speaker. It doesn't do the audience too much good either, because they're like having heart attacks out there, and they can't figure out how to solve the problem. So they got to remember the technique. They got to remember how to solve the problem, right? Yeah, exactly. So you want is a phrase that stays. Phrase that stays. 10 words or less to stick in your audience's mind. 10 words or less are going to stick in your audience's mind, a phrase that stays. And you may be wondering, Tim, what the heck is a phrase that stays? Well, you've heard a couple. One is use the you. Use the you. 3 words, probably can remember after the speech. Grow the conflict. Grow the conflict. Another 3 words, hopefully you remember. And a phrase that stays. Hopefully will stay afterwards. Just write it down, stick it in your mind. 10 words or less to stick in your audience's mind. Now some people stop there. They figure, okay, well, I got a technique. I know how to solve the problem. I'll just do it. I'm going to solve the problem or not solve the problem. It's not I'm done. That's it. But if you give your whole speech and you give a solution and your audience doesn't take the solution, then you kind of wasted your time, right? Kind of a big waste. It's like I got all this great solution, but they're not going to do it. So why did I even bother opening my mouth? So you need the S act of selling. selling. Because there's one question goes through your audience's mind from the very beginning when they're just little kids. It's a 3-letter word. It begins in W, ends in Y. Some of you would already guess what it is. Turn to your neighbor and just tell them what that word is if you can.
Why?
Why? Say it out loud.
Why?
Why? Right? Mark, go to your room. Why? Zena, pick up your clothes. Why? Right? As a kid, your answer to everything was why. So if you can't answer that question for your audience, you're done, you're finished, you're sunk. But fortunately, there's an easy way to answer that question. Just bad if you don't, good if you do. Bad if you don't, good if you do. That simply means if you don't do what I'm saying, it's bad. If you do what I'm saying, it's good. Heard of infomercials? You know what infomercials are? Okay, good. A few of you. The rest of you are liars. It's all right. Infomercials, where they basically say, before, without our new Whizzo magic thing, your life was horrible and awful and a dredge, and you had to struggle and strain. Now, with our new Whizzo magic thing, life goes zip, 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 and your life is so much better. It's amazing. Infomercials, I will talk about that later afterwards. It's an American thing. It solves all your problems in 30 seconds or less. It's just amazing. But then buy the product, all your problems go away. Why? So those are the 4 acts. The first A act's attention. You got to answer, okay, who the speech is for. Use the you. C act, content. What's the problem? So they grow the conflict, big problem. T act, technique, which is how can I solve the problem. Then you have to have the phrase that stays. 10 words or less to stick in your eyes mind. And then finally, T act, S act is selling. Why should I do that? Bad if you don't, good if you do. So I started doing that, going through these processes. I started out with the A act, saying, okay, I started using the you more. After a few months of that, great. Grow the conflict, a few months of that, great. Phrase that stays, worked on that for a few months. And then finally, bad if you don't, good if you do for a few months. And when I finally did that, 6, 7, 8 months later, my speeches were better. I connect with people, pull people in, more certain about what it's more conversational and less instructional on stage, and more enjoyable for the audience. And you can do the same thing. You start using the 4 acts, a little bit at a time, step by step by step. Discover more confidence, more certainty, more powerful, more awareness, more connection with your audience, and you just feel better. And the audience will come to you afterwards and say, John, thanks for that speech. You transformed my life. I just can't thank you enough. So if you really want to tell a good speech, remember, use the 4 acts. All right?